Let's get started. I may go back and forth and admit a few folks as I'm going through the session here. But anyways, welcome. Again, thank you for taking the time on a Saturday morning, evening, afternoon to join the workshop here. I thought it'd be a good idea to showcase some of the skills that I've acquired throughout the years to teach y'all the basics of how IAM works and also build something together. I'm the type of person that I learn best when getting my hands dirty. I want to build something, and that's the best way that I learn. And I've noticed that a lot of people work the same way. I could follow a manual, I could follow an instructional video, but it's not until I actually get into a project that it actually clicks for me. And so that's my approach to this workshop: is we're going to build something together, and you'll be left with a project, something that maybe you could add to your portfolio, something that you can build on in the future in the event that you're looking for a job or you're just trying to spice up your resume or your work skills. You'll be able to use this and say, "Oh yeah, I've done this before." A lot of managers like to hear that when you're interviewing. "Have you done this?" "Oh yeah, tell me more about it." So now you can carry a conversation within this one particular topic, which helps a ton when you're trying to level up in your career. And so here's a bit of the agenda here. We're going to go through the intro. Again, nothing too deep. We're not going to go into deep theory. We can do that at a later time. But today, the goal is to just get into the intro of what it is, what it's about, how it works, right? We're going to build something together for your portfolio, something that you can use in the future. We're going to talk about how to build something using two very popular tools, Okta and Salesforce, which, by the way, I'll preface this by saying I am in no way, shape, or form affiliated with Okta or Salesforce. This is not a pitch to sell you the Okta or the Salesforce platform or products. So, throwing it out there um, for awareness. So, two main tools. These are heavily used in the industry. You've probably heard of them by now. Hopefully, you were able to set up the accounts with the prep guide. If you didn't get a chance to take a look at the prep guide, no worries. We are going to, again, go through the whole thing and you'll be able to sort of go back and do it later. But it's very important. If you do have the prep, if you did go through the accounts and prepped, then awesome. You're in good shape. I'm going to move at a somewhat slow to medium pace, but embrace that there may be some confusion, and that's just part of the game, right? We're going to set some stuff up. Some stuff may not make sense. I'm going to try to explain everything from the most basic perspective possible. But do know that you'll have the recording and we can go deeper into the fundamentals and the theories as we go through and maybe at a later session. But let's dive into it, right? IAM. We all know what it stands for, right? Identity, who you are as a person or a machine, a system, an account. Access, what can you do with that? What do you have access to when you get hired to do a job, for example? What can you access as an employee? Management, who manages your accounts? Used to be the systems administrators, right? When we were talking about on-premise Active Directory servers, used to join your office. Then there was a sysadmin or an IT guy who would create your account in Active Directory. He would give you the login credentials. That's changing, right? Now things are moving to the cloud. Accounts and systems are spreading across different platforms. So it's no longer just this one on-premise Active Directory store that has the accounts. Now they're spreading across different platforms. So there needs to be an easy and streamlined way to manage those identities, right? Those accounts, so that you don't lose track of who has access to what. Right. And so the goal is to have the people get the right access at the right exact time. What happens most of the time for a lot of companies is that they have a new person join the team. That new person has to then wait around for access to a particular app. They get access to the app. Maybe they don't have the right permissions. Maybe they don't have the right access to the proper folders. It reduces productivity. A lot of time is spent, a lot of money is spent on trying to figure out who has access to what. And so these IAM platforms are going to make it easy for administrators like yourself to manage the identities, the users, give them the access that they need at the right time, all automated, right? Automation is the name of the game. We want to make things as automated as possible so that when you start working with companies that have thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of users. How do you manage who has access to what? And what if they have 20 people starting every single week or every other day? I've been there. How do you manage who has access to what? Manually, it would be a nightmare. But if you have an automated way of managing who has access to what, happy days. You'll be in good shape. So why does it matter, right? Why do we need this? I kind of touched a little bit on this in the previous paragraph, but we don't want people to have unauthorized access. And that happens a lot, right? Johnny gets access to server A, but then all of a sudden that one group that he was in has access to four other groups, four other servers, or four other applications, you name it. It's not supposed to happen. Happens all the time. I've seen it happen many, many times. It's not until you have some sort of auditing process, if your organization can even afford an auditing person, that you find out that these things are happening, right? So the bigger the organization grows, sort of the harder it is to keep track of those things. But even in the smaller offices, I've seen it a lot, right? Like in the one man IT bands departments where it's just one person, one guy, one girl, like trying to manage everything, you lose track of who has what. It could become a nightmare. And especially when it comes to access and compliance, yeah, you want to make sure that everything people have access to what they're supposed to have access, nothing else, nothing less. Automation, right? We talked about that, right? We want to make sure that when a person gets hired, they get access immediately. When they leave, they lose access immediately. We don't want to wait around for person A that just got, fired today to lose access to all the accounts tomorrow or the day after. Huge security concern. Happens all the time. I've seen it happen many times, right? They still have access to their email or they still have access to this one app that they got access to like 2 months ago that maybe went through another person and they're still going in there looking at files, Google Drive, whatever it is, right? We want to make sure that they get cut from all access immediately in a sort of a trigger domino effect, simultaneous, instantly as soon as they get let go. That often is controlled and configured with IAM tools, something like Okta, right? Where your HR application may be tied to sort of the main directory base so that when somebody in your HR system is marked as disabled or deleted, whatever you want to call it, that then sends a trigger over to Okta. Then Okta says, okay, disable this account across the board, across any app. And that comes in handy whenever you have users in big organizations that have access to 1,000 applications. Imagine going one by one, disabling the account one by one when you have 20 people that got let go. Nightmare. People do it that way sometimes these days. It's a thing still. It's just mind blowing. So that's why we need to learn these tools. We need to learn this skill because it's important for you to understand how these things work and how to make things more efficient. If you can tell that employer that you can make their workforce more efficient by doing ABC, when you understand that they're doing it the manual way, you're hired. I'll hire you on the spot. If I was in the position where we did everything manually. So compliance, huge, right? If you work in hospitals, you work in financial industries. Compliance is huge for a lot of these organizations. So you want to make sure that you have things in place, again, to ensure that people don't have access to those documents when they're not supposed to have access, whether they're let go or whether they're just not supposed to because they don't belong to that department. So let's talk about the workshop objectives. We're going to jump in very, very soon. I just want to get through these slides just to show you kind of an overview of what we're working with, right? We're going to set up the Okta developer account, which by now you should have already had it. And if you don't, again, don't worry. It'll help if you already had it because it takes a while. It takes a few minutes, maybe 10 to 15. You do need a business email. So there's ways of doing it. I know sometimes some of you may be able to use your work email. I set up some workarounds in the prep there, but that is one sort of small caveat there is that Okta does require that business email. You can get a Google one. I mean, there's tons of ways to get very cheap business emails if you don't have one. For testing purposes, reach out to me. I can set you up with a test email, business email. We're going to create some users. We're going to create some groups, some roles. MFA policies. I'll show you where things are. I don't want to overwhelm the group because I don't know, and I'll sort of get a feel for right now. So, out of curiosity, in the chat, if you can drop an emoji in the chat, maybe like a thumbs up in the chat. Put a thumbs up in the chat if you have experience with Okta. I'm just out of pure curiosity. Drop yeah, just drop an emoji, thumbs up if you have experience with Okta, you've used it. Uh, not that you've heard of it, but you've actually gone in there, you've poked around, you've configured a user, you've looked at the settings, you've done a little bit of work. Maybe you're not a master at it, you're not certified, that's not what I'm asking, but you at least have an understanding of where things could possibly be. Okay. We got a few folks here. Okay. Few thumbs up. Okay. Cool. Awesome. If you don't have experience, not a problem whatsoever. Again, my expectation is that you know nothing about Okta, right? So that's how I'm going to approach it. I am not going to show you everything there is to know about Okta because that would require multiple sessions across multiple weeks. But we're going to sort of go through this as if you know very little to almost no Okta. But I'm going to push forward again. If things get confusing, embrace it. That's what IT is all about, right? You got to embrace that confusion because it's going to happen. We're going to integrate with Salesforce. That's the fun part. That's where it gets really interesting. And that's one of the top skills that a lot of employers look for. If you can tell somebody that you know how to integrate a SAML application, you're going to look like you know what you're talking about. SAML, there's different ways of integrating the applications. SAML is one way. There's OIDC. We could talk about that later. But all you need to know right now is that we're going to integrate Okta with Salesforce so that when a user goes to their Okta dashboard, they're going to be able to click on the Salesforce icon and get taken directly to Salesforce and logged in automatically. And that's the beauty of SSO. You sign in once, you get access to multiple applications without having to re-log in through every single application, right? Comes in handy when you have 1,000 applications. Again, back to that one example. You don't have to go log in through every single application. You just log in once through your identity provider, which in this case will be Okta. Okta will be sort of your source of truth for the identity, and then that connects out to different applications. So we're going to dive into the world of SSO with Salesforce. That's where things get interesting. And then we'll look at the logs. We won't spend too much time in the logs, but we'll peek around. We'll see what's in there and how things look, and sort of that'll give you an idea of what the user logging looks like when they get access to an application and when they actually log in. You may not need to go deep into the logs again unless you're doing troubleshooting or you're doing some sort of audit. I've been in the logs a whole bunch of times, primarily for troubleshooting. Something isn't working, a user can't log in, they get an error, you go to logs, right? Typical workflow. And if we have time, we'll do some Q&A. This might be an opportunity for you to ask any questions if something wasn't working for you, something didn't really make quite sense, then we can dive in a little bit into the Q&A. And then afterwards, we will be able to discuss ways to stay connected. So I think that's it. RBAC. We'll talk a little bit about RBAC, role-based access control, right? We essentially, in a nutshell, what that means, users get access to particular applications based on either a group or a role, and we'll dive deep into what that looks like. And this is huge. This comes in handy when you're trying to give multiple people access to a particular application. So rather than giving each individual person access to the one application, you can give access to the entire group, and the whole group now has access to this one particular application. So we'll dive into that. And again, what you'll leave with is going to be a demo environment that you can play around with in Okta. You'll have the Salesforce too if you want to just go back and forth within that one. I think Okta gives you, a limit of 10 users, if I'm not mistaken, to play around with. But 2, 3 is really all you need. SSO, that's going to be the huge one. And again, the interview and project ready knowledge, right? Once you get through with this and it's working for you, then you'll be able to talk about this and say, I've done that before. I've set up Okta, I've set up SSO, I've set up SAML, I've set up users and groups. those are like really all the things that the IAM managers are looking for. Um, so the more you do it, the easier it's going to get. I don't expect you to sort of know everything right off the bat, obviously, but this is a good starting point for this one particular sort of direction that we're going here. And then at the end, I'm going to share a Discord link. That'll be a way to sort of stay connected. We can work together. I'm going to keep sharing resources and I'll keep doing some of these sessions as well. I love doing this thing, so I don't mind doing these and going deeper into the knowledge here for IAM. So that being said, let's dive in. I think I'm ready to dive in. If you guys are ready, let me check in to see if anybody else has joined.
Definitely ready.
Okay, awesome. I see some people still joining here, so I'm just gonna again go back and forth here to admit some people. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to let's see where my screen is here. Let me just exit out of here. Okay, cool. Um, so hopefully again you were able to sign up for Okta, and you probably realized that Okta made you set up this Okta Verify app, which in a way it's kind of annoying that you have to go through it over and over again, but in a way, it's a really good thing because it's preventing somebody who has your credentials from logging in. So I'm going to log into the Okta dashboard, and if you want to log in as well, by all means, take this as an opportunity. Um, you can set up Okta Verify on your mobile device or on your desktop. I have it on both. I find that it's a little faster sometimes on mobile. Sometimes I can do it on the desktop. Either way. So I'm in my dashboard here, and what we're going to do is we're going to create some users in just a bit. But what I also want to do is in another tab, open up the Salesforce admin dashboard that you got. And you should have an email with the Salesforce login information. And it should look something like this. Okay. So you've got Salesforce, right? Within Salesforce, I'm not going to dive too deep just yet. I'm just sort of setting it up for now, right? I've got one tab with my Okta dashboard and another tab with my Salesforce. Now, within Salesforce, there's going to be, let me see if I can go back to the beginning because there is a little icon on the far right side. Do you guys see the gear that says, it should say setup within Salesforce? It should take you to this setup here. I just want to show you two things. I'm not going to dive deep yet. I just want to show you two different sections that we're going to be working with in Salesforce. Right. So when you go to Salesforce, you'll have a little gear icon. You'll see something that says something around like setup here. And there are two sections that you're going to be working with in Salesforce. And I'll go back to Okta in just a bit. But within Salesforce, you're going to be in users, right? And then you're also going to be working in identity and then single sign-on settings. So we'll go back. So I just want to show you quickly just where those two things are. So if I go back to Okta, let's create some users. Let's start off with the pure basics of creating the users. We'll create the groups, and then we'll talk about how to connect things. All right, so within Okta, go to directory, go to people. Now, I've already created a bunch of users here, but I want you to create two users. And you do that by clicking on add person. Keep it as user. Let's give it a first name. I'm going to give this guy, let's see, could be whatever you want. For the email address, if you have a business email address, you can use that. If you don't have a business email address, you can create, or you could just add like 0tosec.com if you want to add 0tosec. Doesn't matter. You can always delete the user. We're not adding the person to groups. We're not adding the secondary email. We're going to activate now. Now, before I hit save, I will set the password. I don't need them to change their login next time. So I'm going to give this person, this account, a easy for me to remember password. So enter a password that is easy for you to remember because we're going to need this to log in. Okay, save it. Now let's create one more. And this could be another user, just any name you want. Is that how you spell Kenobi? I think so. Okay. You'll activate now. You will set the password. Right. Same thing. Set a easy to remember password for this one user. And save it. So you should have two new users that you just created now. Okay. Once you have those users, we're going to go to groups. This is all under the directory tab. I've got some groups that I created earlier. You should only have either everyone and Okta administrators. Those should be the only two default ones, unless you've created some. So let's create a brand new group. We'll go to group, add group. Let's call it marketing. Right? If I refresh, I've got marketing. I'm going to create one more group. I'm going to call this to HR. Right? Standard names you'll see in the workforce for groups. And by the way, when you're creating groups, yeah, make sure that they are descriptive, that they match the type of employees that will be in these particular groups.
I'm
But
sorry. I'm still on the part where you made the first users.
mhm.
So you do you have to make an email, another email?
Well, you don't have to go out and create a brand new email. You could just create basically a test email, right? So you're not creating anything. You're not going out and creating a new Gmail or a business email or anything like that. Whatever email you give the person here, you could either use at example.com, right? You're not going to use this as an actual email account. That's what I was saying. If you have your own business email account already, like your own domain, you could use your domain as the primary email, or you could just use at example.com.
Okay.
Yeah. Just make sure it's something that it's easy, maybe not too long for the email address here. And then you set the password and make it an easy to remember password. And don't have them change the password the next time they log in. That way you don't have to type in another password. So uncheck that. Yeah, I've used at example.com. I've used it in the past, right? You can see here that was one that I used to. This doesn't go out and validate. Now, what will probably happen is that Bob at example, if this is an actual domain that somebody owns, which it probably is, they might get an email saying, "Hey, Bob, log into your Okta account," right? So that's what I was saying. If you have your own domain, use that. If you don't have your own domain, you can use my domain as the sort of the email address. I may get an email, but I'll ignore it. You could always delete these users later. Doesn't really matter. Once you have those two users, right, we're going to go to groups. And I've created two groups. I've created the marketing group and the HR group. Right. And creating groups is pretty simple, right? Click on add group, give it a name, and once you hit save, it saves it. It's not until you go into the actual group itself that you get more options. So we're going to be looking at one of these tabs, right? Because this group, the HR group that I just created, shows me who's included in this group. And right now there's nobody. By default, it will not add any people to the group. And that's a good thing. You don't want the the group creation to start just adding random people to these groups. So we're going to have to manually add these people to the group. So let me go back one step. This is where things get interesting. So let's start off with the HR group. Under people, which should be the default one there, we're going to assign a person, an account to this one particular group, right? So if I click assign, this is going to give me a list of my users that I created. So who out of my user base here do I want to add to this HR group? Well, I'm going to add my first one that I added here, MF Doom here, and this could be your first user. All I have to do now is click on the plus button, and I'm only going to use one user for this group. That's it, for the sake of the example. I can remove him if I want to, but I'm not doing that. I'm adding, and I'm saying done. So my group now has one account in it. All I want. Now, there is this other tab here, and we're going to dive into this one later on down the road. I can assign an application to the group. And this is very powerful because you can basically automate the deployment of applications or the access of applications to particular users in a group. And we'll, again, dive into this in just a bit. But these are the two sections we'll be working with, people and applications. For now, there are no applications tied to this one particular group. So quick recap, we created two groups. HR has one person, I can see that. Marketing has 0. So let's go to marketing and add the second test user to this marketing group. Again, same steps. We can assign people. This time I'm adding my second one. I can add my first one, but I'm not doing that. I want to show you what each group does based off of the different app assignments. So I'm going to add my secondary user. All right, successfully added. Hope you won. I'll say done. Boom, there it is, right? Marketing group has one user, which is good. Applications should have none. Yep, it's 0 applications tied to the group itself. So for now, again, 2 new groups with each user added to each individual group. Okay. And this is going to, again, tie into how the role-based access works. Now, we can talk about multi-factor authentication, but that'll go into a deeper discussion. I'm going to show you where things are for multi-factor authentication, which will help when you're building out these groups and adding more and more users. So within Okta, on the side panel, you'll go to security and then authentication policies. Going to be on the left side over here. Now, this may look a little confusing, but all I'm focusing on now is going to be the Okta dashboard, right? What kind of policy is enforced when my users go to the Okta dashboard, which will be a single point of login for a lot of people, most of the time in an organization that uses Okta, because again, the dashboard is where all the applications live. It's where the user gets to go in and log in, and then access to all their applications are managed here. Within the Okta dashboard, if I click on it, I'll go back one time. If I click on the Okta dashboard, there is a default catch-all rule. And this is the reason why I get asked for a password or Okta verify. I can change that. I can harden it. I can loosen it. I can do a lot of things within this one policy, depending on my organization. Now, for the Okta dashboard, you want to make sure that it's as strict as possible, right? But again, it's all based on your organization. So, in a nutshell, I'm in the policy that dictates how secure my Okta dashboard login is going to be for my users. If I want my users to use a YubiKey plus a password plus Touch ID on their Mac, then this gets configured here. And we can configure that on a per application basis. So if I wanted to say, I want Salesforce to have high security, YubiKey password, the works. They have to be from a particular network if they want to access this application, right? You can do that here. Again, we're not going to deep dive into this because this gets confusing pretty quickly. And this would require you to use Okta Verify and YubiKeys or any other multi-factor authentication. We're not going to go too deep into that. I just wanted to show you where things are when it comes to the policies that you can enforce for multi-factor authentication. And it's important. MFA is huge. You want MFA on your applications. By default, they're pretty strong, but you can, again, strengthen them, harden them if you want to within the authentication policies. So oftentimes the Okta dashboard will be, again, one section that you'll want to go in there, and you can even edit that by saying actions edit. Don't worry about everything. You don't need to know what all this means, but this is one section where you can say, well, if the platform is a particular platform, deny them. Or again, maybe only have them require a password to log in and not a multi-factor, which would not be very safe. But you can do that on a per application basis or to the Okta dashboard. Okta, I think, yeah, it looks like they consider the dashboard, right, the place where people log in for their apps, as an application, is what it looks like here. So that's that. Again, no need to worry about what this all means. I just want to show you where MFA is configured. That's under the authentication policies. So how are we feeling so far? We created the groups, we created the users, we now know where MFA is located. Are we ready to move on to the next piece? How's everybody doing with the users and groups?
Yeah, we're good. Or I'm good.
Okay.
Yep. Good
Okay.
here.
Cool. Awesome. Just want to take a little stop there. All right. Now let's configure SSO with Salesforce. This is where things get interesting. I'm going to preface this by saying this is the part where things can go wrong and they might go wrong for you because the configuration of SSO and SAML applications usually is pretty straightforward. But there are times where if you miss a URL or if there's a typo in the way you entered in something, it's not going to work. But that's why we're here. We're going to test these things live here on the workshop, and we're going to try to connect Okta with Salesforce. You already have the Salesforce developer account, which is good. Now we're going to see how do we tie those two things together so that when your user, right, when your one user that you created that now has access to this one thing, or that we will get access to this one thing, how do they log in? How do they get access to Salesforce, right? So let's do that. Let's do that now. Applications on the left side. If you click on that, you get a drop down. Let's click on applications under applications. Okta has like 7,000 plus different applications you can integrate. So let's click on browse app catalog. There's a button right here. Click on that guy. Top one, guess what? Salesforce. It's used by almost everybody in the enterprise in the world. So we're going to click on that. Salesforce gives you a quick overview of what it can do. Works with single sign-on, which is awesome. That's what we want. We're going to add the integration plus button here. Now, here's where I'm going to slow down just a bit because I want to make sure that everybody enters in what they're supposed to, because this is the part of the flow where things can go wrong quickly. Application label, you can leave it as is if you've done this, if you're doing this for the very first time. I'm doing this multiple times, so I'm just going to change this myself, but you don't have to change the name here. Just leave it as salesforce.com. Instance type, it is not production. It is sandbox, test environment. That's what that means. We don't have a custom domain. We're leaving everything as default, right? All I did was just change it to sandbox and the instance type. I'm going to then click next. I'm not changing anything else. Now here's, again, another very important part. The sign-on method is going to be SAML 2.0. That is how you get single sign-on. That is how one entity, one platform can trust another and share sort of that information of the user to allow for the single sign-on to happen from one platform to another. This is how Salesforce tells Okta, is this who they say they are? Cool, I'll let them in because you told me that I should, because I trust you, Okta. So I'll let them in the door. SAML 2.0 is what we're choosing here. We're not changing anything yet. You're going to scroll down. You should have a section that says View Setup Instructions. SAML 2.0 is not configured until you complete the setup instructions. Let's click on that. This will open up a new tab with the setup guide. Now, this one setup guide is unique to your Okta instance. So what I'm copying and pasting is going to be very different than what you're copying and pasting because this automatically configures it for my Okta instance, right? So don't copy and paste what I'm copying. So you're going to scroll down. This is essentially telling you where in Salesforce you should go to configure the Salesforce part. And I'm going to show you where that's at. So you can scroll down just a bit until you get to the point number 3, which is on the single sign-on page. Click edit, right? We're going to be on part number 3. So stop right here within this page.
Wait, so how'd you get to the screen again?
Yeah. So when you added the Salesforce application,
Yeah, I'm there.
so do you see the SAML 2.0?
Yeah.
Click on that little dot, radio button there.
Okay.
And then if you scroll down, you'll see sort of in this sort of brownish tag section here, tab section.
You set up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Click on that, and then that should open up a new tab. It will. So when you do that, you're going to scroll down all the way to step number 3, because that's essentially just telling you where in Salesforce you need to go to set this up, right? So stop at point number 3. Now, I want you to go back to your Salesforce developer page that you should already have open either in a new window or in a new tab. Should be something like this. There should be a gear towards the top right corner. Click on Setup within your Salesforce developer. I'm in Salesforce now, right? I'm going to click on Setup. That'll take me to sort of the setup configuration section with a ton of different menus and options to choose from. And I'll pause here to make sure that everybody gets to the section.
All right, so I'm in Salesforce. How did I get to the screen?
There should be a gear button towards the top right corner. Do you see it? Should look something like this. When you click on it, it should say Setup.
Hold on.
Do you see that?
All right, let
That should take you
me.
here to the setup section that has a lot of configuration options.
Okay, yeah, I'm there.
You're going to scroll all the way to the bottom. There's a settings section. Within the settings section, you're going to see identity. This is what I was telling you all about earlier, the 2 different
I
sections.
don't. I don't see settings.
If you scroll all the way to the bottom,
Okay, yeah, and then I see identity. Okay, yeah.
drop that down. Yep. When you drop identity down, the menu there, you should now see single sign-on towards the bottom. Should be the third to
Single
last.
sign-on settings.
Yeah, click on that. Should take you to a screen that looks like exactly like this.
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay. Is everybody here? Who is not in this window here? Anybody not here? Okay. I'll take that as we're all here. And if not, again, you can follow along later. But this is where, yeah, we have to do everything exactly as Okta wants us to do. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So within this section here, click on the edit button. All right. And that is sort of towards next to the SAML validator button. There's an edit button towards the top there. Click on edit. You're going to enable SAML enabled button under the federated single sign-on SAML. That should be checked. It's unchecked by default. Check it and save it. Okay. So now you see a check next to SAML enabled. Now, if I go back to my Okta instructions, right? We're going to be going back and forth between the Okta instructions and the Salesforce. So I'm going to go back to my Okta instructions. We've already enabled SAML, which is what we want. Now, we're going to click on new single sign-on setting. So back to your Salesforce, there's going to be a new button. So don't worry if yours doesn't look like mine. I've been testing some configurations earlier, so this should look different. You should have nothing here. You should have blank in terms of single sign-on. So we're going to click on new, right? You should now be at a screen that looks like this. We're going to go one by one for the sake of having you understand how this is configured. So in the name, if you go back to the instructions, the name could be a name of your choice. So to make things simple, just call it Okta, right? I'm going to call mine Okta 3 because I have multiple applications I've configured. So for you, just set it as Okta. That's it. You could always change it later, but for now, keep it simple. SAML version set to 2.0 by default. We don't have to change that. Under the issuer, so we're going to copy this issuer. This is, again, I'm back in the Okta instructions. I'm going to copy what the issuer is. So I copied that. I'll go back to Salesforce. The issuer is right there. I'll paste it in there. I'm going to go back to my Okta instructions to see what's next. The identity provider certificate. There's a link here. When you click on it, it downloads a certificate that goes directly to your downloads folder. So click on this. You should see a download. When I go back to Salesforce, there's a choose file button, and I'm going to choose that one certificate that I just downloaded from the Okta instructions. I'll do that now. Do this guy. Okay. Identity provider login URL. Highlight that. Copy. Command C, Control C. Go back to Salesforce. Identity provider login URL. I'll paste it here. Right. I've done the name. I've done the issuer. I've done the certificate. I just pasted in the identity provider login URL. Let's go back. Custom logout URL. Optional. I'll just paste it in there. Copy that. Paste that into the custom logout URL within Salesforce. Okay, let's go back to see what else is needed. Entity ID, I think that's blank. Yeah, so I'm missing an entity ID. So we're not using a custom domain. So all we have to do is copy saml.salesforce.com, which they provide to you here. We're going to copy that, and we're going to take that back to the entity ID. So you should have something that looks similar to what I have now. Name, issuer, certificate, login URL, logout URL, entity ID, API name. I think this just did it by itself automatically. So we can just leave it as is. Let me go back to Okta just to make sure I'm not missing anything, because I think all we have to do now is hit save. When you hit save, you're going to get a login URL that we're going to then use over on the Okta side. So let's go back to Salesforce and we'll hit save here. You should see something like this. Okay. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to copy this login URL. This is going to be very important. If you clicked away from this, I'll show you how to get back to this screen in just a bit. But if you're still here, copy this, the login URL, and we're going to paste that into any text editor you have, as long as you can get back to it. Yeah. Paste that in there for now. Okay. I'll come back to that. Okay. Let's go back to Okta, because all we have to do now.
Wait, so what are we copying?
So in Salesforce,
Okay.
you have the login URL towards the bottom. You see that?
Oh, I didn't. I'm still like in it.
Did you save it?
No, let me save it.
Yeah, save it. You should get then redirected to this page here or this view.
Okay, and I see the login URL.
Copy that URL down here, and put that into a text editor or your notes app somewhere on your computer, somewhere where you could easily get back to it, because you're going to need that in order to complete the configuration on the Okta side.
All right, cool.
Yep. We've copied that. We've pasted it. So all I have to do now, looks like I have to go back to my Okta configuration. Remember this page? This is where we sort of left off when we added the integration. We selected SAML 2.0. We viewed the setup instructions. Here's the login URL that we got from Salesforce when we configured the app over there. So I'll go to my text editor just to make sure that's the one. And I'm going to paste that login URL into the login URL field within Okta. I'm in Okta now, right? I'm sort of finishing up the integration here for Salesforce. Leave everything as is. Don't change anything. You have other options in case you wanted to have a logout URL, but you don't have to do any of that.
We have the logout URL here that we see on Salesforce.
The login URL, did you
The
find that?
log the logout URL on
Yeah,
Salesforce.
you don't have to worry about that just for now.
Okay.
That's an optional thing. That's just gonna sort of help with the logout flow for the user, right? If you want them to go to a particular logout, like your workplace or your work, URL website, you can configure that. For the sake of this example, we don't need a logout URL. But the instructions are there though in the setup SSO section that Okta gives you in case you want to set all that up for another project. There you can. So once you have that login URL, we say done. Click on done at the bottom. Cool. We now have a Salesforce application that we've added and configured in Okta. Nobody's assigned to it yet, right? If you see under assignments, which is the default tab that it takes me to, nobody's assigned to it just yet. Now, I could technically start adding people to this one application. And what that means is that whoever I add to this application will get access to the application. I'm not going to do that because when it comes to scalability, this is the part that you may run into some trouble in the event that your organization grows, hundreds of users, thousands of users that need access to the app. Rather than going one by one adding them, we're going to add them a different way. So guess how we're going to do that to make things easy here?
Groups.
Exactly. We'll go to groups, right? We'll go to groups. We have those groups recreated. I want anybody who's a part of the marketing department, could be sales, could be anything you want. I created marketing because I wanted to change the name. We want to give anybody who's a part of this one group access to this one particular app. So we'll click on your group, could be the marketing. Let's just do marketing. We have one user there. We have OB1 in there. You have a different name in there. Under applications, we're going to assign an application to the group, meaning anybody who's a part of this group will automatically get access to this one application. So we'll assign application. You will choose your Salesforce application and you'll click assign. You'll say done. The marketing group now has an application tied to it, right? With only one person in here. So anybody who gets added to this in the future will automatically get access to Salesforce. Now let's create one more application, and this is going to be a bookmark application. We don't have to configure SAML. It's very easy, but for the sake of showing you the two applications and how they relate to the groups, we're gonna proceed with that. So let's go to applications. Applications once again. We're going to browse the app catalog within applications. We're not doing Salesforce. We're going to click on the search here. Popular searches is bookmark app. So you could either type it in or click on bookmark app here. And we're going to click on the bookmark app with a star icon here. And we'll say add integration. For the application label, let's call it Reddit or reddit.com. For the URL, reddit.com. You say done. I already have mine added, so I'm not going to add it again. But all you have to do is do this. Give it a name, give it a URL. We'll say done. Pretty simple, not much to it. When you do that, you should now have a new bookmark application within your application section. If I click on it, it looks something like this. Now, I gave mine a logo. Optional, you don't have to. But if you go and find a PNG or JPEG, you could upload a logo to the bookmark. Totally optional. Now, similar to the Salesforce application, we can tie these bookmark applications to a particular group, right? So for now, it's considering this as an application. It's not really an application, it's a website, but we're not going to assign it manually to people here, kind of like in Salesforce, right? We don't want to go manually giving people access to this. We want this to be tied to a group. So we'll go back to directory and groups. Let's go back to your groups. And let's give the HR folks access to Reddit, which sounds hilarious, but I'm sure there's tons of HR people that are browsing Reddit right now or throughout the week. So applications under the HR group, we're going to assign an application, just like how we did in the Salesforce application. And we'll assign the Reddit bookmark application to the group. So your HR group now has access to one application, which is the bookmark app or website bookmark. Yeah. With only one person in it. Okay. So far, so good. How are we doing? I'm going to pause here. Coffee,
Yeah, I'm
coffee.
good.
Yeah.
Great so far.
Good. Very well. So one user in the group, one application. We've got another group called marketing, another user with another application. Do you see what's happening there? I'm separating the users by groups and by applications. So in theory, MF Doom, my user MF Doom from another department, should not have access to Salesforce when they log into Okta. And we're going to test the theory in just a bit. So how do we test that? Well, we created the users earlier, right, with an email address, with an easy for you to remember password. That's what I was saying. Let's make it easy for you to remember because we're going to test the login. And if this doesn't work for you, don't worry about it. We're going to push forward. We'll learn it. You can review the video. So let's test that. We can always test that with your first user. So I'm going to choose this guy, MF Doom. I'm going to open up an incognito window in just a bit. I'm going to log in as this user. And I'm going to see what I see, right? Because in theory, MF Doom should only have access to one thing, which is reddit.com. So let me open up an incognito window. But before I do that, how do I even get to my user dashboard, which is different than your admin dashboard, right, for Okta? So what we're looking at here is the admin dashboard, which is not what your end users are going to be looking at all, or they shouldn't. They should not be in here at all. They should have their own dashboard that looks different than this. So a couple of ways of doing that. There's this sort of icon towards the top right corner, grid looking squares. That takes you to the end user dashboard. If you hover over it, you can click on that and you see my end user dashboard. You can click on that, opens up a new tab. Now that's going to take me to my end user dashboard for my account. This is my admin account, right? This is not the one test user that I just created. So I'm seeing something that the other users are not going to be seeing. But what I want you to do is bookmark the link up here because this is your user dashboard, right? And I think you could even get rid of from admin true. That you don't need to have that in there. I don't think it makes a difference, but I think I removed it when I bookmarked mine. Anyways, this is your bookmark, your dashboard that your end users will be looking at. So bookmark this before we even move forward. You're going to need that in just a bit. So I'm going to attempt a login from MF Doom to see what that looks like, right? So I'm just going to copy that for now. I'm going to open up an incognito. And again, this is going to be your user, which will have a different username. I bookmarked my end user dashboard here. Let's see if this works. It might ask me to set up Okta Verify. I'm pretty sure it will. Yep, sure enough, because of my policy that enforces MFA, which is what you want. So I'm going to set that up now live. I guess it's opening up the dashboard. That's fine. MF Doom, it kicks me back to my Okta. Again, this might look a little different for you, but you might be seeing the same flow where it's asking you to add MFA. Yes, I do want to enable passwordless, which is good. Always a good thing. I'm going to skip that. I'm moving a little fast here because the configuration of MFA is something that you could probably do on the side once you do that, once you get this up and running. Okay. Can I verify now? No. Okay. Boom, I'm in. After getting through MFA with my one account, MF Doom, which only has access to one app, I only see one app. So the theory worked, right? They don't see Salesforce. They shouldn't see Salesforce at all, and they don't, which is good. They only get access to one application, which is this bookmark that I created. If this user were to be removed from the group, they lose access to this one application. All right. Now, is that true? Does that actually work? Let's test this in real time. If I go to the group itself, nope, wrong one. HR. Right. Remember, the one group has access to the one application with this one user that I just logged in. I'm going to remove this user from the group to see if they lose access to the one bookmark app, right? So click on the X. I've just removed them. I'm going to refresh, see what happens. Yep. Group has no users. So in theory, back at my MF Doom Okta dashboard, if I refresh, it's gone. They've lost access to the applications, which is what you want. All right. This is powerful because when users get shifted around from group to group, they either gain access or they can lose access. Now, this could also be dangerous because if you move a user into a group that has access to way more apps than they're supposed to have access to, then they'll have access to those apps potentially. But hopefully this gives you an idea of sort of the automation and the power of identity and access management and how it plays out with users and groups and access to applications, right? So I'm going to log out of this guy because that's really all I wanted to show you is what it looks like when they log in and what happens when they lose access. Now, what about the Salesforce app, right? We configured that. That is something we set up as a SAML application. Let's see that in action. What does that look like when a user that has access to the application gets access to the application, and what does the user flow look like? Because it's configured, sort of the backend stuff is configured. As far as we know, we're going to find out if it actually works in just a bit. So let's just double check. OB1 is still in there. Yep, he is. What I'm going to do next with the secondary user that I have here, I'm going to, again, open up an incognito window, log into the Okta dashboard, click on the Salesforce link. Hopefully it should take me to Salesforce, right? Let's just double check there's Salesforce in there. Yep. Application is tied to the group, which contains this one user. So in theory, OB1, who is part of the marketing group, should have access to Salesforce. Let's test that. It's gonna, again, ask me to do the Okta Verify Fandango, which is fine. I could always disable that, but I didn't want to have something look too different than what you have. But you could always change that around.
Yeah, every time I log in, it logs me back into the first account.
Log
Yeah,
in,
I'm experiencing the same thing. It's not
log,
allowing me to select a user.
log into the dashboard.
Yeah,
Yeah,
use a incognito, right? If you're
Yeah.
logging. Yeah.
If it could be, did you try removing the URL, the admin? Let me see. So if I edit this, so get rid of the. Oh well, mine has admin true. I was going to say maybe this is the problem.
I think they just have to use a different browser,
Um,
like incognito or Chrome or something different.
yeah,
Uh,
because I'm using incognito and it works.
Okay.
So you're saying when you go to the user dashboard and you try to log in with the test user, what happens?
it logs me into the first account, the admin account.
Okay,
Yeah,
did
I don't even get an option for a username. I am using Chrome Incognito for all of this, and I'm just getting a prompt to enter my Okta authentication for my original account.
hmm. Yeah, I'm wondering if there's some cookie stuff going on there, but I mean, if it's incognito, there shouldn't be any cookies in
Well,
there.
I just realized there's a link. Go back to sign in. Then it prompts me for a username, so that might work for other people too.
Ah, there you go. So can you repeat that again? There's a button that says go back to sign in.
Yeah, underneath where it says next here, if it's already asking you for your Okta authentication, there should be a link below that that says go back to sign in. If you click that, it'll take you to this sign in page where you can enter a username.
Hmm. Okay, there you go. And then add the or use the username for the one test user that we're testing here. Again, if you're signing in for the first time, it'll have you go through the Okta Verify uh, workflow. So get that in there, get it on your phone or on your computer, and then we'll test it out. So, and we can go back. For the sake of time, let's push forward. Again, just for demo purposes, and we could always go back and troubleshoot. So
Okay.
I have a user here that has access to Salesforce, right? So I'm going to log in as this one user, and you'll be logging in as the one user who has access to the one Salesforce app too. So I'm going to try that. Ask me for my password. There's the Okta Verify setup for every user that signs in for the very first time. Add the account. I'll authenticate as the one user again. And this is only going to be something that the user does one time. They don't need to re-enroll each time for Okta Verify. They'll just get the link. Okay, so I'm in, and I see Salesforce. I don't see Reddit. I don't see anything else. I only see Salesforce with the one Salesforce application that I created. Very similar to the Reddit application example, right? They log in, they have access to that. We know they have access to that because we confirmed it within the group itself. Now, does it actually work? If I click on Salesforce, in theory, it should redirect me to Salesforce, and I should not have to sign in again. That's the beauty of SSO, right? Log in once, have access to many apps without having to go back and forth with passwords. So, is anybody here? Is anybody on this page with a Salesforce app? Has anybody made it this far? Just a quick check.
Yes.
Okay. If you're not here, don't worry about it. We're going to push forward. So let's click on it. Oh, single sign-on error, the dreaded single sign-on error. We can't log you in because of an issue with single sign-on. Contact your Salesforce admin for help. Oh boy, what do we do? This is classic. Comes up all the time. Very, very common issue. Why can't my user access Salesforce? I gave them access
The-
to it, right?
Yeah, but the user doesn't have a role app assigned in Salesforce. Is that why?
Could be.
Has it been created? Yeah.
Could be. As an IAM engineer, analyst, architect, this is the type of things, these are the types of things, and those are good observations that should be flowing through your mind right now, right? Where do you go to check? Is it an Okta thing? Is it a Salesforce thing? Could be either or. We don't know yet. This is classic. You're going to run into this a lot. So let's check. They have access to it here. I can check the logs, but I'm not going to go that route in Okta just yet. I'm going to start with where the error is occurring. It's occurring in Salesforce, so maybe it is a Salesforce issue. Let's start there. So I'm going to go to my Salesforce account, my admin account, dashboard, whatever you want to call it. Under administration, users. And again, this is in the same section where we found identity and single sign-on, but except we're going to go to users. Well, I don't have a user for OB1 in my Salesforce. Maybe that's it, right? Sounds like that would be it. And that likely is the issue here. So let's create an account for this one user in Salesforce. Now, there are ways to automate this, to have that account be created automatically in Salesforce so that we don't have to do it manually. But we're going to do it manually so you see how the flow works. And we can do some automation later on down the road in another session. But for now, yeah, the account isn't here. How is Salesforce supposed to know who this one user is? Okta says, hey, here goes OB1. And Salesforce is saying, who the heck is OB1? I can't let them in. They're not part of my platform. That's likely what's happening. 99% sure that that's what's happening here. So let's create that. Let's create that user, but I want to make sure that I have the proper email address here. So I'm going to grab the email address for the one user in Okta that is assigned to the Salesforce application. All right. I'm just going to copy and paste that so make it easy. And back in Salesforce, where is it? Oh, under the user section, I'm going to create a new user. Give it a first name. Last name. Alias should automatically type in there. Email will be the same email address that you have in Okta. Very important. Super important. That's why I wanted you to copy and paste it so that you don't typo this. Username should automatically populate with the email address. Leave the nickname alone. You don't have to change that. The role doesn't matter for now. This guy's the CEO. For the user license, let's choose chatter free. This is one of the most basic roles and licenses in Salesforce. We're not going to dive deep into what the licenses do or how they work. We'll just keep it simple and say chatter free. Profile, chatter free. You should have a first name, last name, alias, same exact email address that you have in Okta. Chatter free user license, chatter free profile. And that should be it. Let's save that. Okay. If I go back to users in Salesforce, Obi-Wan Kenobi's there with the same email address. So let's test my theory. Let me close the error link there. I'll refresh for good measure. If I click on the Salesforce link again, ooh, something's happening. Look at that. Viola, like magic. I'm in. Salesforce, single sign-on in the works. You just saw it before your eyes.
Mine's not working.
Okay. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. If something isn't working, that means either the email address is not connecting with what's in Salesforce. All right. So this email address should match exactly with what you have for the user in Okta. That's why I mentioned this is the part that gets tricky, and embrace if things don't work, because there's always going to be something that fails. Oftentimes, it's a configuration of the user. This is where we troubleshoot, right? Now, you can go different directions for trying to find out where things are failing. One little tool that I've been using lately here in Salesforce to try and figure out what's happening with the login is under identity. Back to the single sign-on settings that we were on earlier, right? To configure your Okta configuration for SAML there. There's a SAML assertion validator. If you click on that, that does a quick check of a recent failure. And that tells you what could possibly be the issue of your most recent failure. I'm sure there are some logging sections within Salesforce that you can dive deeper to try to figure out what's wrong or what went wrong. I don't know Salesforce that much to go that deep. You might, but I've found this to be handy when trying to figure out why something's not working. Did anybody get this to work? Just pure curiosity. Anybody at all like actually went through, clicked on the Salesforce link from Okta and single signed on to Salesforce without having to sign or use another username and password? I'll check the chat.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it works. I think a lot of us are able to make it work.
Okay. Awesome. If it didn't work for you, it's expected. Something was typoed, something wasn't on there right. That's why you have the video here to review it, and we could always work through it together to try and figure it out. But in a nutshell, that single sign-on, right? It's somewhat straightforward, right? We configured the SAML application in Okta. We gave the users access via a group. We tested the group or the user login. The user logged in. We hit a snag initially, and that's because the user account wasn't created in Salesforce. There's ways, again, to automatically have the user account created in Salesforce with just-in-time provisioning, and there's a whole bunch of other really, really cool things you can do. But for this demo, we manually created the user in Salesforce. I purposely had it
My
fail
bad.
just to show
Should be
you.
good now.
Oh, you fixed it?
Oh, sorry. Apologies.
What was the issue? Just curious.
Did not actually have SAML checked.
Yeah, and then that's the thing, right? When you're going through the SAML, and that's why I wanted to go somewhat slow in that section within the Okta Salesforce application configuration. You could always go back, edit, and it should be SAML because this is the magic here, right? This is what makes single sign-on work, like how we just observed. This is super important. If this isn't here, this is not going to work. Don't change around usernames or any other option. You could, depending on your organization, but most organizations use the email address as a username in Okta. Right? And if again, if this one user, right, from marketing, see, Obi-Wan, right, no longer a Jedi, no longer part of the Force, no longer part of Lucasfilm's enterprise here, leaves the organization. Boom, we get him removed, account disabled, application still there, but person Obi-Wan does not have access to any applications. We should be seeing Salesforce here. We did earlier, at least, when they had access to via the group, but I just removed them from the group, which then removes the application for this one user. So in theory, again, let's test the theory for removing the user. If I refresh, I'm in the Obi-Wan Okta dashboard here. It's gone. Now, they may still have access to the Salesforce account over here, right? Because Salesforce may not know, does not know that Obi-Wan should not have access to this app. This is where you want to sort of incorporate some automation and some, it's what they call life cycle management, right, of your accounts that tells other applications disable this account over there when they're gone for a later session, because that goes deeper into lifecycle management, which is a part of IAM. So that was SSO in the works there. You saw it, you experienced it. Now you know how to set up a SAML application, Salesforce, which is a big one, and how to create the user, add the user to a group, have the application automatically provisioned for the user, and then we tested SSO, and it worked for most of you. I could go into the logs under reports. So Okta has reports and then system logs. If your organization ends up using Okta and you're the IAM engineer, right, you'll be in here a lot when things fail. And what you're looking at is basically user application, right? You can see I removed the user's application. If this was set up with lifecycle management, then you would see an additional log that says account disabled upstream in Salesforce. But this is essentially, yeah, where you'll be diving in for troubleshooting purposes. No other reason other than maybe auditing if you want to go in there and start looking at what a user's doing in a particular day or time when things might have gone wrong or questionable times. But other than that, the logs are here for you to troubleshoot. I'm not going to go too deep into what these logs mean or what they do because they can get pretty confusing in here pretty quickly. Some of it could be cryptic, but again, logs are here for when things fail. If I would have seen an Okta error message for the single sign-on piece earlier, then I would have checked in here. But because I saw a Salesforce branded window error message, I went straight to Salesforce. I didn't really waste so much time.
So I have a quick question for the purposes of the trial.
Mhm.
How do you turn off Okta Verify altogether?
Yeah, good question. No, it gets in the way, especially as you're creating users and you're just testing things out. It's kind of annoying, but makes it annoying for the hackers if they're trying to get into your account for sure, which is what you want to stop. But yeah, basically in a nutshell, you go to security, and under security, you'll have authentication policies. Now, here's where you control what Okta will present to you as an MFA factor when logging into particular applications. Okta considers the admin console, which is where we're in now, and the Okta dashboard, which is the end user dashboards, as individual applications. So if you want to get rid of Okta Verify, it doesn't look like there's a way to do it across the board, but you can do it across the board for the console, the admin console, right? So if I click on admin console, there's some policies here. So if we look at them, if we analyze what these policies look like, we can see that priority number 1 is given to this predefined admin policy that says if any request comes in, then access is allowed with a password and another factor. Another factor meaning Okta Verify, right? And if you wanted to turn that off, you should just be able to go to either deactivate it. That would be one quick way, right? Easy way, probably the fastest way. Or you can edit and say, then user must authenticate with. Does it even give you the option to do one password or just password? It looks like for security reasons, it is forcing you to do another factor. I don't even see the option to do just password, right? Password and yeah. So can I just cancel it? Let's see what happens if I just disable that, deactivate that. Oh, wants me to log in with my admin account. Going through the whole flow. Does this work?
Yeah, I was getting that pop up too a while ago. So
Okay.
I'm gonna sit back and watch.
Okay. Yeah. So let me go back to my on. Okay, so maybe I'm just typing probably the wrong password. Okay, wrong password for sure. So let me verify really quick. I'm just gonna sort of test this out for you here. Okay.
Yeah, it looks like it's still going to require it. Even if you deactivate the first policy, the second policy will require it.
Yeah, it could just be for just plain old policy security reasons.
The
It,
reason why I'm trying to deactivate it is that whenever I try to log in as another user, even on a what do you call it? Even on a incognito window,
mhm.
it forces the Okta Verify, which I click on, but then it verifies as me, not as the user, and it won't let me verify as the user.
as the other user.
It won't let me set it
Yeah.
up as the user.
I'm getting the
Interesting.
same issue.
Are you guys using the Okta desktop app?
Yeah.
I
Use the
tried
phone.
the,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, use the phone because I think the Okta desktop app defaults to whatever you told it to default. I'm sure there's a way to go in there and change the default setting, but yeah, use the Okta Verify on your phone because that'll give you the option to choose between different users or accounts rather.
I
Yeah, I
think what you have to do too is like you have to go into the Okta app on the desktop, and then you'll have to select your specific like other user that you're trying to get into, because yeah, it'll
Hmm.
default to your basic
Hmm.
like admin account.
I was able to disable my admin app policy.
Oh, you did.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
deactivate. Okay. Yeah, because I didn't see the option from within. Yeah, because you still have the catch-all rule, which will be there by default, right? You could probably, yeah, you should be able to disable this one, but for the admin console, there isn't a way to disable the catch-all rule. Um, if we create a new rule, could that be possible? Let's see. Password and another factor. Yeah, even if you were to create a new rule to override sort of the default catch-all, there isn't an option to just do password for the admin console. Now, if we look at the dashboard, right, the user dashboard, and look at the catch-all rule, can we change that to just password?
Yes, you can.
We can, right? And that I guess you could do that for testing purposes. But yeah, for the admin console, looks like there isn't a way. It's like hard coded to not allow just password for the admin stuff. Which the more security, the better. I get it. But for testing purposes, yeah, it kind of gets in the way in the admin dashboard. And I think there's a way for you to tell it, like how often it can check you. That definitely is. We're not going to deep dive into that now, but there is a way for you to check it or tell it to not check you every single sign on or every like 1 hour. I think you could extend that through maybe authenticators or global session policies or whatnot. But if I find out, I'll let you know for sure. Um, so that's basically what I wanted to display to you guys. What I wanted to demo is a working lab that you can then build on. You can use this, continue growing with it, continue testing it. Maybe find any other applications that you want to incorporate. Salesforce was the one that I found to be the easiest to incorporate SSO. A lot of applications allow you to have an enterprise account or addition to be able to incorporate SSO. I hate when they do that, but I get it from a business perspective. But if you find any other applications that have SAML, there's a few out there. I think Box may be one of them. They might have changed things recently. I'm not sure. Test out SAML, right? Test out how does it work. You can even add multiple versions of the application, like I did. You can play around with the bookmarks app if you want to, as a way to sort of show what those apps look like when it comes to the distribution of the apps based on the profile or the user. But anyways, let's see what else we got. And I think that was it. That was the bulk of it. I'm going to share with you guys a Discord link, totally optional. I thought maybe it'd be a good way to stay connected, keep working, keep asking questions, continue sharing resources, maybe more demos like this if y'all are interested. There's a whole bunch of other things I can show you if we want to go deep. And then we can start working together to sort of build on this one particular topic, right? IAM, which is huge, hot topic. This is the type of skill that everybody needs, right? Especially if you're getting into cybersecurity. Again, you don't need to be a, mega cybersecurity DevOps genius anymore. If you learn sort of the basics of administering the users with applications and policies, you'll be able to sort of land a job eventually, right? But having this working and practical knowledge is huge, especially when you're talking to managers and employers, because they want to hear that you've done this a few times already. And even if you haven't done this in at a workplace, just even having the knowledge of doing it in a lab environment is big enough when compared to somebody who's never done it before. Cool. All right, y'all. Well, thank y'all for joining. This was a ton of fun. Again, hopefully you got some value out of it. Join the Discord. Let's keep the conversation going. Let's keep building, and hopefully we can do this again soon. But if you have any questions, you could always reach out to me via the email from within the prep emails that I've been sending out, or within the Discord. You could always reach out to me there, and we can continue the conversation going. Hope you all have a good weekend. Thank you for joining on a Saturday, and we'll talk to you guys soon.